This video is specifically for Israelis. If you live in Israel, you need to watch this. If you know anyone who lives in Israel, you need to send this to them. This is urgent, it is life or death, and it is not a political lecture. It is a reality check on your own safety. I am filming this on the 15th of May 2026. Somebody pointed out to me this morning that today is the 78th anniversary of the Nakba. The theme of content that I have been producing all week is nuclear disarmament. And so when somebody reminded me of the date, I thought I must do something for the Palestinians. This is not for the Palestinians, this is for the Israelis. And I need you to listen to me carefully. Jews were promised safety after the Holocaust. You were then brought to a piece of land that conveniently is also incredibly strategically valuable for Europe and the United States. Just happens to be the historic homeland of your people. You were then made, without your informed consent, the on-the-ground custodians of a nuclear weapons program that you were not informed of. And while Israel knows now that it does have nuclear weapons, you are still not being told the truth about what that actually means, about your safe place. That nuclear arsenal is not protecting you. I know I would personally rather die instantly in the crater if somebody else does bomb me than live downwind of the waste and die slowly and painfully and pass leukemia on to my children. Personally, I don't know what you're scared of. Big enemy gonna bomb you. Your own bombs are killing you now. You are not being protected from the arsenal. The arsenal is not protecting you from anybody else. The criminals are the people who are running Dimona and the political military apparatus around it. This small amount of people, it is a criminal cartel of names that recur historically over and over and over, are also slowly genociding you. The population that was funneled into the location deliberately as part of the extermination. And if you don't believe me, do your own research. Start with the London Society of Promoting Christianity Among the Jews, and then ask whatever search engine you use about the East India Trading Company's connections to early Zionism. Because the people who funded your heroes wanted to kill you. That's what their own parliamentary records say. And the Jewish people who took that Christian Zionist money and lied to you knew exactly what Britain was building in the Middle East. Your body, your children's body, their children's blood, the soil under your house, the aquifer that you rely on for fresh water, all of that is a human shield. You think Hamas were using human shields? Nuclear contamination does not respect your borders and flags. It does not discriminate based on the colour of your skin. Nuclear fallout is not only going to affect Palestinians, it is already poisoning you. In 1997, the Environmental Health Perspectives wrote a peer-reviewed paper that was published in PubMed. This was written by scientists and lawyers representing over 40 workers who have cancer who had worked at Dimona. The dilemma that these lawyers had in 1997 is that, conveniently, for the death cult, you cannot litigate cancer causation against a facility when that facility's existence is itself classified. So, we don't know how bad the poisoning of Israelis and Palestinians actually is, because as far as the state of Israel is concerned, Dimona just doesn't exist. That doesn't stop the leukemia. That doesn't stop the leukemia. The cancer cells are confused. They are not sure. Did you say you had a right to exist or that you don't exist? They exist, either way. So these lawyers had to invent a scientific panel mechanism under court supervision because the normal tort discovery would force the Israeli state to admit that it had nuclear weapons. By 2011, Dr. Thelma Byrne, the former head of Radiation Safety Department at Dimona, testified in court that workers there were being exposed to extremely high radiation levels, some as high as the annual limits daily. Understand that the institution will always soften its rhetoric. So when you have a doctor who has worked in the safety department telling a court that workers there were exposed to extremely high radiation levels, that is an undersell of the reality. She said, and I quote, "We would get contaminated every time we went to work." She said, "I worked with materials whose nature was unknown. They didn't tell us what we were being exposed to. Radiation safety wasn't mentioned." She says it wasn't what it was today. It was just a marginal issue they could hand wave away. She testified that some of the cancers could have been prevented if exposure tests had just been given to the workers. I want you to meet the man who doomed the only safe place, in theory, that the Jews ever had. In 2015, a committee chaired by the then deputy head of the Israeli Supreme Court, Eliezer Rivlin, ruled on causation. His conclusion was chilling. He found no direct link between the work and the cancer, but he nevertheless recommended that the state pay compensation anyway. Why? Because to look at it at all any further would force the Israeli government to admit they had nuclear weapons. So while pretending that there was no link, when there obviously is, the science is clear, that's not up for debate. It's quick cause and effect. You walk into work at a nuclear plant, you walk out contaminated. When your children get sick and have leukemia, it's nobody's fault. The specific sentence recorded in official Israeli court documents is written by him to avoid the government having to discuss details of the top secret Dimona plant in court. But it still had to pay 168 cancer-stricken workers over 78 million shekels. And it forced them to sign an NDA. They're not allowed to talk about it or the fact that it gave them cancer. The workers' lawyers actually declined the first offer. And the Israeli state and courts, instead of doing anything to rectify some of the harm, spent the next 2 years harassing these families and wearing them down until they finally took a slightly larger financial settlement 2 years later. The wider piece of research that I am reporting on is all contaminated hotspots and what cleaning them requires before the sea levels rise. Dimona wasn't on that list because as far as the internet is concerned, it doesn't exist. A human person triggered my memory by mentioning the Nakba. Well, a slow, silent Nakba that does not discriminate between working class Israelis and Palestinians has been going on since 1948. I just want to point out the scale of the sheer cognitive dissonance of this death cult's trillion-dollar propaganda machine. An LLM just presented to me a paragraph that works very hard to convince me that Israel doesn't have any nuclear weapons. Yet that machine, in its own image tab, produced this. What the fuck is this then? And what the fuck is that? This is being compared to Chernobyl. Because of the lying, what we know about Dimona is a composite compiled of whistleblowers, investigative journalists, concerned Arab neighbours, satellite imagery, and applying the basic scientific understanding that we have grasped from other countries who have nuclear programs. Because even when it goes well, it's going badly. You cannot stop the radiation from leaking into the ground, no matter how well you think you are containing it. I just talked about the Irish government distributing iodine pills in case there was an accident at Sellafield. Well, the Israeli army began distributing iodine pills in 2004, and they are still doing it. Iodine tablets are what you give a population when you are no longer confident the containment is holding. So containment has not been holding since at least 2004. That means you are already sick